Okay, we're live. Hey guys, I'm Kristen Howerton. I blog at Rage Against the Minivan, and I am here with my friend Leslie Dixon. She is a sex educator, and I'm going to have her introduce herself and talk a little bit about what she does and how in the world she got into this, really a career of teaching kids about sex.
Right. Well, my name's Leslie Dixon, and I'm a registered nurse, and I think that's where it all started.
Yeah.
And you're right, Kristen. It was just by, I just fell into it.
Yeah.
As a teenager, if you'd asked me, I would be teaching sex education. I don't think I would be doing it. I became a school nurse, and I would be the one to teach the sex education classes. And I loved it. Because those young people had so many questions, and I loved answering them. And I found that I really liked teaching it. So I continued to teach it, and then I'd send the young people home to talk to their parents. That didn't happen very much. And I thought that was really sad because I could teach them, but they have questions, and they're going through puberty. They're going to have even more questions. So I thought there really needs to be classes for parents and children.
Together.
Together. Not taking the parents in one class and the kids in another, but they needed to do it together.
Yeah.
So I moved to Orange County in the early 90s, and I was lucky enough to work for this amazing agency called CCAP. And that was what our focus was, is teaching these classes. And I was given the opportunity to write a curriculum for parents and children, preteens, or we call them tweens now.
Yeah.
And it was amazing getting to write the curriculum, and it was even more amazing as I taught it the first time. And here was the sea, because our first curriculum is just, the first night is just parents. And it was the sea of mothers and fathers. They didn't know what they were getting into. And by the end of the evening, you could just see the relief in their eyes that they got to take a course, and they knew they were going to take a course with their children, and they knew that a topic that's so difficult to talk about but needs to be talked about, somebody was going to help them. The expert was going to be there to help them
and coach
them, and it was going to be easy.
Well, my kids and I have taken a class with you.
Right.
Well, my daughter and I took a puberty class with you, and then my sons and their dad took
Rites of
Passage, which was about sex.
Right.
And I have to agree. I thought it was a really great experience. We learned a ton. It definitely took the kind of mystification out of it. It didn't feel awkward, and I think one of the benefits coming out of the class was it kind of opened up the conversation, so now everybody in my family is just super comfortable talking about everything. When they went into it a little bit buttoned up and a little awkward.
Right,
so
I remember that.
Opened something up.
Yes. Your daughter was on it from the beginning. She was really running the class. I was just going to sit down and let her run the class. She was on top of it.
She wanted to demonstrate her awareness of the topic.
And she did it well.
She did. She's funny. So why are parents so uncomfortable talking? I mean, we're talking parents that are comfortable on a wide variety of subjects. Why is sex and puberty one that creates so much anxiety in us as parents? What is that about?
What I find, and I ask this question in all my classes, is that when the parent was their child's age, how many of those parents actually got any information? And what did they get? And they all smile and they look at me like, I didn't get anything. Somebody threw me a book. I took the class, and I just sort of, winged it. And
that's
so
true.
How do they feel comfortable talking with their children when they're not comfortable with it?
No one did it for them.
No one did it for them. And the other issue that I deal with all the time is we're a society that is very sexualized. If you think about all the commercials, all the things that we see on TV, magazines, on the internet, most of it has a sexual connotation.
Yeah.
And so we're sort of sexualized by that. but we're still afraid to say vagina and penis
to our child.
Right.
Right.
And we're afraid to actually say breasts, because now we say boobs. We're really one of the most puritanical societies because we're so afraid of the topic. So everybody is sort of waiting for the talk. And I get this all the time, is that I will talk to my children when they come to me. And then we'll have the talk. And if you're waiting for that, it's going to take a long, long time, because if you don't start young, and I mean really young, just the basics, then they're more than likely not going to come to you. But we really are afraid of this topic. We're afraid of saying the wrong thing, of just having this conversation in general, that our children are going to ask us something that we may not be able to answer. And of course, our own discomfort with the whole topic of sex and sexuality. It's sort of taboo, and that's what we do in our class, is we get beyond, it's really beyond the taboo.
That was definitely our experience as a family. We got beyond the taboo, and now it's like, there's less anxiety, there's almost a little bit of a jokey spirit.
Exactly.
And, you did such a good job of really, your classes are not serious.
No, they're not.
I mean, it's serious topics, but it's, there's levity.
Right.
Which was super helpful. I wonder, too, it seems to me like a lot of parents are really uncomfortable with their own kids' sexuality. And I will say this even for myself. Like, as I see my kids sort of rounding the corner and turning into sexual beings, I would like to just turn that light switch off.
Right.
So how do we combat just our own discomfort with, like, our kids are going to grow up and have sex?
I think we're really afraid of that. Again, it goes back.
I'm having a panic attack saying it.
And that's it. You asked me why people don't do it. Is because there's a panic around it.
Yes.
And it's a panic about, and you actually mentioned it, is, in reality, children, all human beings, are sexual from the moment they're born.
Right.
And that's why they explore their bodies, and there's sort of a discomfort from the very beginning. And I think first and foremost, we need to get over that.
Yeah.
We need to sort of get comfortable with our own sexuality, not the sexuality we get from the media, but a healthy sexuality about how our bodies are so natural, and that's what people and children are going to do. So you need to start with the basics. You need to start with proper terminology, obviously, and help young people feel comfortable in their bodies at a very young age.
Right.
And the more you talk about it, the more you help them to feel comfortable, I think the parent is going to feel more comfortable. But I think the other thing is parents need help. I don't think you can do it without some kind of help. I think you can parent. I think you can go online and take classes for parenting. But I think when you're talking about sexuality, and I'm not talking about sex necessarily, I'm talking about comfort in one's body, you need some help. And you need help in a book or one of our classes. But I think the more you do that and you get some help, I think the more you'll feel comfortable and the more the child's comfortable. Because if a parent isn't comfortable, the child isn't going to be comfortable. They pick up on everything. If a mom says something about her body, boy, that daughter is going to pick it up. And from early on, we're talking about little kids who pick up everything about sexuality and their body. And in our youngest group, which is third and fourth grade, when we start talking about their body, little girls don't like their body. They think it's ugly and disgusting. And so I know early on, the more parents feel comfortable, the more the young people are going to feel comfortable. And yes, they are sexual. And again, the more we talk about it, the longer it's going to be that they're going to engage in actual sex.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I mean, I think there are some parallels between the sex talk and talking about racism. There's this sort of underlying feeling people have that if we don't talk about racism, it'll go away. If we don't talk about sex, no one will have it. But in reality, the more we talk, the more we communicate with our kids, the more comfortable they're talking about it, the more likely they are to delay.
I totally agree with you. I think there's any topic like that where there's some kind of taboo, that people are afraid to get it out in the open.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this. I mean, we're seeing this with gender identity. We are seeing this with racism. And unfortunately, it's sometimes not healthy way of looking at it. You know, we're seeing it come out in not always the healthy way. So yes, it's the people. I think it needs to start somewhere. All right. So you start in such a broad way with racism and gender and how to look at these issues in a healthy way. I think what I try to do is with sexuality, and how this parallels is that the earlier you start this, then it impacts self-esteem. And that's the bottom line to everything, is that if a young child, whether it be about racism or gender identity or sexuality, if they don't have a healthy base early on, it's going to affect their self-esteem.
Yeah.
And then it cascades in the other direction. So earlier is better. And really, again, parents need to be educated. Parents need to feel comfortable about talking about all these topics. And this is going to help to create a healthier generation. Versus young people now that are really struggling with this topic.
And one of the things Leslie and I have been talking about is the fact that this is really, it's not, there's no such thing as the talk, even though we hear that all the time, and I even wrote that in the title of the video. But there should be no such thing as the talk. If you have one sex talk with your kid, you have not had enough talks, right? I mean, it should be an ongoing conversation, like revisiting it all the time.
All the time.
And so one of the things that she and I wanted to do is start this conversation with parents. And we're going to try to have a weekly conversation, close to weekly, where we talk about all the topics involved in this, because there's so much more than sex, and there's so much intersectionality with the sex talk. So you've got sex, but you also have puberty, and then you have self-esteem.
Exactly.
Then you have social media. Then you have relationships, and sexuality kind of infiltrates all of these topics. So we're going to do a deeper dive on each of these topics in our following conversations, and we will take your questions, but we're really going to dive into all of this stuff and hopefully help you guys feel equipped to then go back and talk to your kids.
It really is a holistic approach. And I always say it does take a village. Who talks about it? I think everybody needs to be part of this conversation. And it needs to be an open conversation. It's such a taboo topic. And I think just like what Kristen said, there is no talk. It's an ongoing conversation. And there are the most amazing topics you can have with your children. And have them when you're driving in the car. Have them before you're going to sleep. The more you feel comfortable and the more you open the door, the more willing your children are going to come to you. And that is going to help those young people feel comfortable with anything they're faced with going to you. And that's probably the most important thing for me, that children always feel comfortable going to their parents when they have questions and concerns. Because
if they don't go to you, they will go to their peers, and or they will go to pornography. Or they will satisfy that curiosity in some way. And you want it to be you. You want them to get that information from you. And as uncomfortable as it is, when they hear a new word at school and they don't know what it means, you want them to be able to come home and say, Mom, what's a blowjob? What does this mean? What does that mean? Because otherwise they'll ask a peer. They may get terrible information. Or they'll go to the internet. They will go to the internet. And we all know where that leads.
We know that. Last year I had a school call me because 4th grade girls had access on internet about blowjobs and oral sex. And nobody knew what to do with it. It was like everybody was waiting for the right time to have these conversations. And it's like puberty. If you wait too long, they're already in puberty. And, remember how you felt when you started to experience puberty and you didn't know what was happening. So it's got to be talked about earlier than later. And you're right. We're so afraid of these conversations. We're so afraid to talk about where babies come from and oral sex. And we're afraid that they'll go out and do something about it. But research says no. It's the other way. The more you empower them, the more you talk with them, the more they're going to postpone any kind of high-risk behavior.
Yeah. Laurel says, as a single mom, this topic makes me really nervous.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is really nerve-wracking. But I feel like regardless of gender, I don't know, my experience so far has been that I've been able to have some really good conversation with my boys. I know some people are like, oh yeah, just hand that off to the dads. But, you know, I mean, you're a female, you taught my boys in that class.
Right.
That, you know, it seems to go okay.
You know what? There's no right or wrong anymore. You know, when I first started teaching, you know, it was very traditional. And now there's every situation, and I don't stop anyone from coming into my, you know, the rooms. And especially we're seeing more and more single moms and single dads.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or same-sex.
Yeah. Absolutely. All kinds of issues that are there. And so I think the most important thing is to talk with your children, you know, and to give them the information and initiate it and to get help. I think that's the most important thing, because I think as a single parent, you oftentimes think, I'm doing this all on my own, and you don't have to do it on your own. And it's important to find some person, book, some way to get a support system so you can talk, if you've got a son, to be able to talk with him and help him through puberty. And he knows he can come to you, and that's really important.
Someone asked, is there a good book you would recommend? I have a few favorites, but what about you?
Well, there's a lot written for girls, not so much for boys. And that really is the challenge, is that we sort of don't want to address the boy thing. We're really good about addressing the girl thing. It's almost like we're in the old time where, you know, just talk to the boy for 2 seconds and he's okay. But, you know, boys need it just as much as girls.
Yeah.
I think probably the best one is The American Girl.
I agree.
You know,
I
think
love that
by
one.
far
For puberty.
For puberty, I think that's one of the best
The
books.
Care and Keeping of You.
Care and Keeping of You. And they have all kinds of series. They have it on self-esteem. They have it on
really
bullying. I think that's still one of the best books that are out there. Perfectly Normal is a really good book for the total talk.
Yeah, I love that one.
Now, it's really funny. Where Did I Come From, Where Babies Come From, was done back in the 80s. And it's still out there, and it's still a really good book for the basics, to get over the discomfort of it.
We liked It's Not the Stork.
It's Not the Stork, is from the beginning part.
Yeah, the same,
right.
the same series.
Good book for the boys is the one, and off the top of my head, it's written by the AMA, and it's a book on puberty and where babies come from, written by the AMA, and I was even surprised that they could write a good book, and they did. So those are the basic books that are out there, and if you go on our website, birds, N as in Nancy, bees, connection.com, we have a whole resource that you can go to. And
I'll link that up at the bottom.
And not only that, we send all information to give you information to keep you updated on what's out there and how to talk to your children. I am a really good resource as far as that's concerned.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely check out their website. They have tons and tons of resources. If you're local to Orange County, they have a ton of classes that I highly recommend. If you know me in person, we're doing a puberty tea here at my house for girls next month. So if you know me in person, hit me up for that, and I'll give you all the info. Well, that's all for today, but we are going to do, like I said, try to do this conversation about once a week, and we'll have a different focus every week. We'll try to take your questions. So even if you have questions and you're watching this not in live time, just hit us up with your questions, and we'll try to get back to them next week.
Thank you so much for allowing me to do this.
Thank you. I'm so glad we did it. All right, guys. See you soon.
Bye.